My name is 𝖍𝖓𝖊𝖕, and in Spanish it means star. While I do have that name, I'm visibly Chinese. And if we want to completely not use a name from a different culture, then our future baby names are going to be like Apple or something.
Hello?
Hi, my name is 𝖍𝖓𝖊𝖕, and welcome to my channel where I talk about social issues, the media, and sometimes myself. So today it's going to be a combination of everything. I'm going to be discussing whether using a name of a different language is considered cultural appropriation. And I'm going to be focusing on my personal identity and experiences. Since this video is on a sensitive topic, I definitely want to have disclaimers in the beginning. I really like Cheyenne Lynn's way of putting disclaimers in the video, so I'm going to be using that same format. So what this video is going to be is that it's going to be an open dialogue. I am open to criticism in the comments. While I may not be able to reply to everyone, I usually read all of them. So you're welcome to put your opinions down in the comments, especially if you're a person of color, since I will be talking about my Spanish name. If you're of Spanish heritage, you're welcome to express your opinion in the comments as well. And also, if I say anything offensive, please let me know in the comments. I do not intend to offend anyone. This video is to explain my name, the controversy that I have sort of received around it, and also discussing the question in the title. So as I briefly mentioned, this video is also from my personal experience. I am simply referring to my personal experience as a visibly Chinese person with a Spanish name. I'm not speaking for other cultures and don't intend to. I know that I can only speak for myself, and even in the Chinese culture there are people with different opinions on this topic, so this is simply my own opinion. And then what this video is not going to be is that it's not a YouTuber's apology video where I fake cry and stuff, so don't worry, I'm not gonna do that to you. It's really just me sharing my thought process throughout this whole thing and what I've learned. And the second half of this video, I'll be talking more about my research on cultural appropriation regarding this topic, and also looking at some comments on Quora and Reddit, places like that, to see what other people think about this topic so that we can all learn more about it. Unlike most of my other videos, this video is not going to have a conclusive statement because it wouldn't be appropriate for me to use my experience as someone in one culture to represent everyone. I have been thinking a lot about this topic since the last comment about my name, and I do want to take this seriously. And yeah, I've been putting off making this video for a few days now because I just don't know how to properly explain this and what the best way is to go about it. But I think I can't overthink this. I need to just be honest and transparent with you guys. So one thing I'm doing is that this is not scripted. It's all the thoughts that I've had about this, and I'm simply just like sharing it. So as you can see in the title or thumbnail, my name is 𝖍𝖓𝖊𝖕, and in Spanish it means star. While I do have that name, I'm visibly Chinese, and in my DNA, my huge percentage is also Chinese. The controversy surrounding my name kind of stems from the pronunciation of my name, because in Spanish, it's supposed to be pronounced as 𝖐𝖊𝖊𝖕. Granted, I don't speak Spanish that well, so like, you know. But how I pronounce my name usually is 𝖍𝖓𝖊𝖕. So people have been commenting quite a bit about that. Some people have also talked about how I say my name in 𝖍𝖓𝖊𝖕 in the English way, but then in the same sentence I explain how my name means star in Spanish. And it's just a little odd how I put the two and two together. Initially when I saw these comments, I felt uncomfortable for sure, but I think now after like maybe a month or so, I feel like I have learned more about it and I am more receptive to this criticism of my name, and I understand where these people are coming from. I'm like low-key kind of nervous because I just want to make sure I don't say anything wrong. But I thought that if I'm gonna explain my name and what I've learned from it, it's best to explain the whole context from my first impression of my name, kind of like since I was a kid, to reading the most recent comment about this and really thinking about it and talking to my friend. So from the very beginning, when I was born, my parents named me Estrella. They found it in a baby book and thought it was a unique name, so they just went with it. So from a very young age, I was always told that I was a little Spanish because my dad's side is somewhat Spanish and somehow it's in my DNA. My name is also Spanish and it means star. I can't remember who told me that. Either my family told me, or I remember some English tutors who spoke Spanish would bring that up, and I was like, oh cool, like that's great, because it does sound pretty and I love the meaning behind it and I resonated with it and still do. And since I always sort of had trouble making connections with other people, I felt like this was a good name for me because it's like, yeah, I'm different, like I just, you know, are. I can't. Growing up, I really liked my name and I would get compliments from my name because it's not a very common one. People usually have a positive feedback about it, so I never thought too much about how it means Spanish and what that could possibly mean and how it could possibly be inappropriate. So specifically with my intro, I kind of started doing that and saying that my name means star in Spanish because in high school when I was in grade 9, like I would introduce myself as Estrella and sometimes I would just randomly bring up the fact that it means star. The intro was kind of me using that ironically, like how I used to in high school. So initially when I saw these comments about my name, how I'm not pronouncing it in the Spanish way and stuff, in my mind I felt like people were suggesting that I should say it in the Spanish way even though I grew up saying it the more English way. I felt uncomfortable, and I think one of the huge reasons being that I felt like people were assuming that I had absolutely no Spanish heritage in me. I thought that people just assumed that I don't know what my name means, I don't know how to properly pronounce it in Spanish if I want to, and that I don't have any like Spanish heritage in my DNA at all. Granted, like a few years ago when I did do a DNA test, some of my family members are from Peru, so I felt like people were also assuming that I just had no Spanish ties at all. I also felt like people were kind of nitpicking at my intro because it was simply my intro. It's this short little catchy phrase I say and nothing more. I felt like people were just criticizing something that I had no intention of making inappropriate. So yeah, initially I kind of just wrote it off as like, well, this is how I've been pronouncing my name for the last like 19 years, so I don't really see any problem with my name at all. But then I started getting quite a bit of comments about this topic and I felt like I needed to address this properly. I have replied to, I believe everyone that have commented, but I feel like since then my thought process has changed, especially after seeing the most recent comment I got, which this person said, 𝖍𝖓𝖈, that word is pronounced like 𝖍𝖓𝖈. I know that's her name, but if you're going to say that it's a Spanish word, it's not at all pronounced that way. Please have some respect for another culture. Say your parents were inspired by the word, but don't purposefully mispronounce it and call it that language. And after seeing this comment, I did do some more reflection because I do see where this person is coming from, that I am mispronouncing my name because this word is from Spanish. So I should talk about it appropriately, even though I didn't name myself that. I did still feel a little uncomfortable from this comment just because I felt like she was assuming that I don't appreciate the culture at all. I have taken Spanish classes before, and so that's kind of my thought process. But then I talked to my friend about it. Granted, she's not Spanish, but she gave me a different perspective. She basically highlighted quite a few things. One of them being the fact that everyone isn't one culture 100%. So just because I have a small percentage of Spanish DNA in me doesn't mean that I have the privilege of using that in my intro and sort of branding myself as that. Because that's essentially what an intro is. It's like the viewer's first impression. Never wanted it to seem like I have the intention of exploiting a culture to seem exotic and brand myself as that, because I am primarily Asian. Another thing is also, just because I have taken Spanish classes and know that my name means star and know how to pronounce it properly doesn't mean that that's a good reason to keep the intro, because I don't know enough about the culture. Like I just simply don't know enough about it. And so what she suggested to me is to completely change the intro and cut out the part where I say my name means star in Spanish, because if I do want to appreciate it, that's not the way to go. It would really just seem like I'm highlighting that part of me and sort of masking my Asian heritage and not being proud of it, which means I'm not only disrespecting people who are Spanish and have that culture, but I'm also disregarding people who are proud of their Asian culture. And especially now during Asian Heritage Month, I think it's important to think about. So after more reflection, I do agree that I don't want to have that part of me where I explain how my name means star in Spanish, and even just the Siri voice of saying it the right way, saying 𝖐𝖊𝖊𝖕. I would much rather learn more about it, and if in the future I want to make a video about it, it would be when I have done more research and not just be talking about the meaning behind my name. And even though majority of these comments are from people who are viewers and appreciate my content but don't enjoy the pronunciation of my name, none of them seem to suggest that I should change my intro. I think it's still the best way to go. Just the fact that I'm not pronouncing it properly in the same sentence where I explain that in Spanish just doesn't add up. Moving forward with my intro, I'm just gonna say, hey, my name is Estrella, make commentary videos, yada yada yada. Maybe I'll say something witty in between. I did kind of come up with like a witty thing in my Instagram bio. But yeah, if you have any suggestions of what to put in my intro, let me know in the comments. I apologize for offending anyone and disrespecting the culture. And moving forward, I'm gonna be more careful with doing anything regarding other cultures, making sure that I ask people about what they think before I do that. So now I'm just going to further explore why my name could be considered cultural appropriation, or at the least cultural insensitive, from my research and just looking at other people's opinions on this topic. There's tons of definitions of cultural appropriation and a lot of different interpretations of it. So I'm gonna find a few and talk about them. I feel like talking about one definition is just not gonna be enough. So it says cultural appropriation is the adoption or theft of icons, rituals, aesthetic standards, and behavior from one culture or subculture by another. It generally is applied when the subject culture is a minority culture or somehow subordinate in social, political, economic, or military status to the appropriating culture. This appropriation often occurs without any real understanding of why the original culture took part in these activities or the meanings behind these activities, often converting culturally significant artifacts, practices, and beliefs into meaningless pop culture, or giving them a significance that is completely different or less nuanced than they would originally have had. So I think from this definition, although it is more specific, it doesn't necessarily talk about names. But in this definition, it also talks about how someone is taking a culture from a marginalized group. And I think that is where, as I mentioned, gets more nuanced, because it's hard to compare, say, like a Chinese culture versus Spanish culture, and which group is more minority. Another definition is from the website 𝖍𝖊𝖈, and it says cultural appropriation refers to the use of objects or elements of a non-dominant culture in a way that doesn't respect their original meaning, give credit to their source, or reinforces stereotypes or contributes to oppression. In terms of giving credit to a source, I would think that maybe because if I am saying my name is Estrella and saying that it means something in Spanish, that I'm giving credit. But at the same time, I think that's the hardest part for me to understand, is if I should give credit and say it's Spanish. Does that seem like I'm exploiting the Spanish culture? Or should I completely eliminate it and sort of, I guess in a way, not be giving credit for my name being Spanish? So I'm really not sure. The website also says, in this way, cultural appropriation can be most easily recognized by asking the question of the non-dominant group, does the use of this element of your culture in this way bother you? So I think that's a great question to ask, and that's also something I'm wondering as well. And that's why I do appreciate the criticism I've gotten, because from that, I know that some people are bothered by it, some people to a lesser extent, some people to a larger extent, but there are still people being bothered. And from looking at different sources, it looks like cultural appropriation is when you use something without the group's consent. And I feel like because I didn't ask for the criticism, like I did get the criticism, but it wasn't requested by me. That's also where I fell through, where I could have done better, is to ask people in the Spanish community, hey, is it okay to put that in my intro, or should I just completely eliminate it, or what should I do? I should have asked before I put it in the intro in the first place. So in the article in Everyday Feminism, it says that to you, it can feel like a big deal to have to give up something you've borrowed from another culture and incorporate it into your life, especially if it's meaningful to you in some way. As I've said, I do really resonate with my name. So this does make me wonder, like, whether it's even appropriate to keep my name. It feels like just because I resonate with my name and I was born with it, doesn't justify well enough that it's not cultural appropriation. As I'm reading more about this, it becomes a more complicated issue. While I'm getting more clarity, at the same time, I'm like getting a little bit more confused because there are so many nuances and context is so important. So back to the zine I was reading, it says cultural appropriation is profitable. Objects and traditions, but not the people, of marginalized cultures are seen by the dominant culture as exotic, edgy, and desirable, which translates to profit. Capitalism works best when people are not individual people with celebrated differences, but identical workers, cogs in a machine. So from this, I think how it relates to my case is that when I make videos, I am monetized, even though it's only in my intro. It's the way I express myself. So the fact that I keep bringing up that part of my identity is pretty much making money off of it. Whether I intend to or not, that's just kind of a fact. Growing up, because I struggled with my Asian identity, I have to say that I did feel like, wow, I am a little more exotic because I'm a little Spanish. Definitely don't want to continue doing that. I want to genuinely learn how to appreciate that culture and not just use this one thing, the fact that it's part of my name, to, I don't know, just add. One thing that this article is also mentioning, like other articles have mentioned, is that cultural appropriation is usually when you are in a dominant culture and then you like use or adopt a different culture. In my case, because I'm not a white person, it's not as black and white, but I think that just because I'm a person of color, it doesn't give me more of a reason to use my name inappropriately and the word inappropriately. And I think this is definitely important to think about, is that like someone who is a person of color could very much be cultural appropriating like a different culture just because they're not white doesn't mean that they have like the free card to do whatever they want with another culture. They're still not part of that culture. If they still didn't get consent and stuff like that, it's still cultural appropriation or cultural insensitive nonetheless. They don't just get to write it off. And I think in my case also, I definitely don't just get to write it off just because I'm not a white person. So I think Reddit has a really great post about this topic. One of the top comments, the person talks about 3 main points. One of them is that to consider the relationship between like my culture and the origin culture. And this person makes a great point that if you're a white person and you're born like a French culture, which is like a similar power dynamic and level, it's different from a white person borrowing a culture from a Native American culture. So a second consideration that they talked about is, what is the significance of the name, and is it sacred or limited in its source culture? I feel like my name doesn't have a very significant sacred type of meaning to it. So from ancestry.ca, it is saying right now that although in some cases it may derive from the medieval female personal name Estrella, in most instances it was probably a habitational name from any of the numerous places named Estrella, and other possibilities are a topographic name for someone who lived at a place from which roads radiated out in a star shape. If you know any like huge cultural meaning there is to the name besides it meaning a star, I would love to read about it. I haven't found any information on that. And then third is, what is the intention? What is my personal relationship with this culture or this name? So I think this is definitely important as well. Under the same post, another person says, appreciation is good. It's understanding the context, which I think I do because I know the meaning. Not abusing sacred images, words, or objects. There is no sacred thing behind it, I don't think. Seeing a thing as part of a bigger culture instead of a pretty thing you can just pluck out for your aesthetic. Before I made this video, I feel like I definitely kind of cherry picked that, put it in my intro, and just call it a day. Relating to my culture, I know if someone were to have a Chinese name and mispronounce it and they're not Chinese, I would feel uncomfortable as well. And I know I also get icky with people who get Chinese tattoos without knowing what the character is, how to read it, what it means, or even if they know it, they don't know enough about the Chinese culture and simply doing the tattoo for the aesthetic. I feel uncomfortable. So, from my experience as a Chinese person, I've never met someone with like a Chinese name who isn't Chinese. But I imagine if I do meet someone like that, they know how to somewhat speak Chinese and they understand the culture, then I'm like, good for you. Like, people are going to be curious and ask, oh, like, where's it from? What's the inspiration behind it? As people have asked about my name, I think it could spread the culture. But I think that's also a very subjective thing, because cultural appropriation, one of the definitions is just the fact that, like, if it bothers people from a culture, from that specific culture, then it is or could be considered cultural appropriation. That's that, So as I promised, I'm gonna read some of the comments on the video premiere and the community post. So next time if you see either of those, make sure to comment something. Maybe I'll read it. I really appreciate your guys' comments. It just feels really great that we have like a community here, and without your guys' comments, it wouldn't be the same. So first comment I'm gonna read is Skies, because they talked about the historical context behind Spanish and Hispanic culture. So I want to touch on that. People seem to forget that there was at one point Spanish influence or colonization even in certain countries in Asia, which this is something I didn't know about, and I find it interesting and I resonate with it because like my dad's side, some of them came from Peru. And like I never really asked like how that happened, whatever. Yeah, that's interesting to know. Spanish, like English, is a language that is not tied specifically to one culture or region. There's Spanish language influences throughout the Americas, parts of Africa and Asia because of Spanish colonies. I know a lot of Native Americans with Spanish last names, although they aren't Hispanic or Latino whatsoever, but that's because of the enslavement of natives under Spanish rule and Catholic missionaries. So thank you for the brief history lesson. It definitely gives me more clarity on this topic. And then another comment is from Tokisuno. I hope I pronounced it right, but I see it in the comments a lot, so thank you for the support. I've seen other people with Latin first names, like I went to a Starbucks in Toronto and saw this tall white woman with the name Estrella, and she called herself Estrella. I'm not sure how. And I don't see anything offensive with it. XD. That's definitely an interesting perspective, because before I saw these comments, I was under the impression that people are more likely to think that's appropriation, but now I feel more relieved that I feel like it could be appreciation. Brianna also has a similar sentiment. I'm Latina and speak Spanish and have no issues personally with people of color taking any Spanish names. I think it's cute and see it more as cultural appreciation. It even gets us to appreciate our own culture again. That's definitely interesting. I do hope that that's what my name does, although I don't know if my intro does that. I don't think it's cultural appropriation. I also don't have a problem with the pronunciation. I think the only thing is just acknowledging it's a Spanish name or the meaning. However, I think it would be different if like a white person had this name, since there is the context of many POC having had to change their names to be palatable to white people, being made fun of their names, and the commodification of cultures. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, as I've mentioned from my research, I think that the power dynamic is really important. Like if a white person is using a culture from people of color, it's different from a person of color using a culture from other people of color. Okay, we got more history lesson from Pip. I believe this issue is definitely nuanced and I couldn't give you a definitive answer. Me too. Pip says, for example, in the Philippines, a lot of names are Spanish because of the 300 plus years Spain occupied the Philippines. They changed Filipino names to basically be able to tax the population, meaning lots of Southeast Asian people now have Spanish names. Yeah, thank you for that historical context again. Definitely helps give me clarity, and I'm sure it'll help other people too in the same situation as me. Okay, last two comments. Now, believe is how you say your name. I'm not sure, but I did ask for their pronouns. They're non-binary, and they said I'm Brazilian, and here I'm considered white, even though I'd be considered a POC in the US. That is so interesting, because I also know that growing up, I thought that Hispanic people are considered white. It depends on like where you live for sure, because I lived in Asia, I lived in Hong Kong, so anything other than, you know, like a Southeastern Asian appearance, I just assumed that, oh, they're white then, you know, or white passing. But even if it wasn't, names are already so mixed that it's almost impossible not to use names that are originally from a different culture. Yeah, I definitely think so. It's like our languages, it's rooted from a different language in many cases. I mean, even the name John, it's such a common name and it's derived from Hebrew, from a culture that some people have no relations to, but they have that name. And if we want to completely not use a name from a different culture, then our future baby names are going to be like Apple or something. So I definitely see where you're coming from, and I do agree with that. And they say, in my case, I'm non-binary and I've chosen now. They say it's a gender-neutral name in Japan, but it could also be short for Naomi, which is a common name here in Brazil. Actually, I'm pretty sure pronunciation is Nayo, but it's pretty cute. I'm not sure. It's really hard to find cute gender-neutral names that are common here, so I have to resort to looking at other options. I chose now because I like it and because it's easy to pronounce for Brazilians, and I think no one will automatically gender it when they hear it. So I will talk about this, but just to preface, historically there has been conflict between the Chinese and Japanese people, so definitely I'm not saying it's the same thing, it's because it's not. But since they brought it up, I thought I would talk more about how I would think if it was a Chinese name. From this example, I can see that definitely context is so important, because like if someone were to suddenly change their name for no good reason, and it's a very obviously Chinese name, especially if it's like super long, like not short like this name, but like super long. I would just feel like, what are you doing? Like, are you Asian fishing? And I think the reasoning behind this situation definitely makes sense to me because there are really not that many gender neutral names. I just think that, similar to my case, it's just important to recognize it's from a different culture and appreciate that culture by doing research into the historical context, the systemic issues that the group faced or faces. Okay, actually 2 more comments. One of the comments is short. So Meraki says, "Hi, I'm Latina Mexican here. Just want to say that I don't think there's any problem with using a word from Spanish as your name. Just try not to butcher the pronunciation too bad. It's a little pet peeve for some native speakers, and I'm glad you could find your identity in a word as beautiful as Estrella." Well, thank you. I, again, do really resonate with it, and I do love my name, so yeah. I do definitely get the pet peeve thing too. Like, if someone who was not Chinese had a Chinese name and didn't like pronounce it right, I might be like a little uncomfortable, but at the same time, I don't have any plans to change the way I pronounce my name just because I've been pronouncing it the way I have for like 19 years. Although, like, I do recognize that the Spanish way to pronounce it is something like 𝖍𝖓𝖊𝖕. Again, I do not really speak Spanish much, so like I don't mean to like make anyone uncomfortable by literally just saying my name, and I hope that's not a pet peeve. I am interested to hear what you think or what other Hispanic people think in the comments. I think that if this was someone else with a Chinese name, I could also understand why they would pronounce it the way they do, but I would hope that they know how to pronounce it in the Chinese way as well. So okay, very last comment, because this video is like 30 minutes long. I know I said 20 minutes, but shit. Okay, so this person is called 𝖍𝖊𝖘𝖙. That's their username. I also see some white people use Japanese, Korean names, or generally East Asian names, mostly because of anime and K-pop, I think. True, probably. I'm interested in what your thoughts are on that. I'm half Asian, but not Japanese or Korean, nor do I have an Asian name, so I don't feel like I should be the one to judge. And I don't know, it kind of rubs me the wrong way, but I also don't want to talk over the people affected by that. I think I probably associate it with the white people who are obsessed with Asian cultures or use them as decor, like Buddha statues, for example, or to be trendy. I feel like similar to your situation, I can speak on it, but not exactly, because although I'm Asian, like almost 100%, but like I'm not Korean or Japanese, so I can't really speak on this too much. But I would say that I could see how people who are Japanese or Korean could be offended by this, because going back to one of my definitions that I found, they said using this cultural thing as like a meaningless pop culture thing. So I think this example could be that. It went from, you know, a lot of Asian people growing up would listen to K-pop and watch anime, but at school they felt embarrassed because other people would criticize them for doing that, people who are not Asian, especially white people. But now white people are like doing it, and you know, now it's like all popular, everyone's drinking bubble tea, like it's a weird time. But so there's no doubt that it's a trend. I do think that if they genuinely understand the culture enough, not just being obsessed with K-pop or anime, that's not really understanding the culture, I don't think. That's just one part of the culture. But if they truly kind of understand different aspects of it, then I get that. And I've actually made a video about this. I talked about Asian fetish, so you can check it out. In the media, especially when they portray Asian women, it's a lot of fetishization and sexualization, rather really portraying them in a healthy, accurate way. People really love like anime and K-pop. It doesn't mean that they necessarily respect the culture. In fact, it could be the opposite. Maybe they're just watching anime because they like the sexual aspects of it. But again, I think the bottom line is to just ask people around you what they think. You know, even if you don't know anyone in that group, go online, like go on Reddit or Quora. There's answers there. While I haven't read all the comments, I do appreciate all of them. I also recognize that quite a few of you have mentioned that you're changing your names, or you have changed your names because you're non-binary, so that's cool. We love the queer representation here. Yeah, okay, back to the video. There's definitely like an area where you're just like, okay, this is fine, but this is not. And in order to really know that, since it's so nuanced, we have to talk to people of that culture. There's no way of knowing and making assumptions, even if you're a person of color using a language from people of color. You just can't make assumptions because it's not the same culture. So I think that's definitely important to remember for myself. I will continue being receptive to criticism. I am still learning to do that better. But if you have anything you want to say in the comments, let me know. I've been talking for like a while now, so yeah, let me know if you have a name that is derived from a different language. I think it'll definitely be interesting to talk about in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like this. I make commentary videos every week, and I'm trying to do it twice a week now during the summer, so stick around if you want to. So hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and catch you later. Bye.